The biggest fallacy is, people think of sales as a stereotypical salesperson, whether in your mind that's the used car salesman or maybe the engineering type, serious intellectual type sales, or the life of the party guy who's telling all the jokes. The problem with that is I'll say there's all kinds of different buyers. So successful, smart companies realize they want a very diverse sales force, and they want all kinds of salespeople because they have to relate to all type of customers.
This is Outside Sales Talk, the best podcast for outside salespeople. I'm your host, Steve Benson, and we're here to chat with the world's top sales experts so that you can get their best sales tactics to level up your game. Welcome back to Outside Sales Talk. Today we have Mike Hayes with us, and we're going to talk about managing your career path in field sales. Obviously, something that all of us do and need to think about. So, by way of introduction, Mike is an expert in the medical sales industry, specifically, so pharma and med device, and he's worked with top companies in the field, including Johnson and Johnson, Glaxo, Novartis, and Merck. And he's also the host of the podcast Get Hired in Medical Sales. So, obviously, an expert in a very relevant topic for a lot of us. Welcome to the show, Mike.
Steve, thanks so much for having me. And like you said, I think it's relevant because we're all working on this together, right? Trying to like move from A to B and in our lives and keep growing in an ever changing marketplace, especially coming out of this COVID time where, virtual stuff and trying to touch base with customers and even think about our own career path has been more challenging and but then maybe also has more opportunities and more things to think about.
Absolutely. Well, let's jump into it. How can field salespeople develop a long-term career plan?
Well, I love that because I love sales. I've done it for several years, 30 years. And it's such an awesome lifestyle. And it has, I'll be real honest. My answers aren't super deep. I love sales because of the flexibility of the income potential and of the opportunities that are out there. Once a person has experience in sales, really, I mean, the sky's the limit. And I say that meaning, talk about career path and opportunity. Once you've kind of cut your teeth in a specific industry, then you can kind of reflect on, okay, what do I like and what I don't like about that? And what have I learned about where the opportunities are and maybe where they're shrinking? And where would I be a good fit? Like, where could I see myself, continually growing? And that's the beautiful thing about this business. There's just always going to be opportunity. I always say when the economy's bad, they want more salespeople, right? Got to get sales up. When the economy's good, they want more salespeople. We got to get the sales. We want more sales. So it's kind of a good job security to be a successful salesperson.
Absolutely. I think it's a great long-term career path. Um, and I think that's it's one that's a lot of people are in right now and are doing really well in. Now, I think there's also people that would like to do better in it. How can they tweak their plan to have goals and set goals appropriately that will help them progress in their plan to the next levels, to the next, whether it's a level in title change, whether it's the next level in income. What are some things that salespeople can do to build that plan?
Well, since sales is a very individual thing, because we all know there's different styles and there's different challenges and problems. And the biggest fallacy is, people think of sales as a stereotypical salesperson, whether in your mind that's the used car salesman or maybe the engineering type, serious intellectual type sales, or the life of the party guy who's telling all the jokes. The problem with that is I'll say there's all kinds of different buyers. So successful, smart companies realize they want a very diverse sales force, and they want all kinds of salespeople because they have to relate to all type of customers. Like in our business in medical sales, there are more and more physicians and providers that are millennials. So now all of a sudden, not only are, there's a lot of salespeople who are millennials, but you're having to relate your message to a younger audience, maybe who come out of medical school and started a practice. And so I say all that to answer your question in that you have to get to know yourself. What makes you tick, what motivates you, what reinforcements you like, and then approach your career a little bit that way. I mean, for example, in medical, I'm in pharmaceutical sales. So we have a little more of a higher base salary and a little less of like an open-ended commission plan. And so, as a family person with kids, I like the idea if I work really hard and I know that my base salary keeps growing, I take a little bit of risk out of the equation when I plan my career. Now, the next person sitting here is saying, "Hey, I like more risk. That gets me fired up in the morning. I like to have more on the line." But I just think to answer your question, as you get to know what motivates you, what challenges, what risk you can tolerate, and what kind of selling environment that you thrive in the most, that'll help you, set goals and plan your career path.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one has to be introspective here too. You have to look at yourself and figure out where am I strong? Like, am I more someone who will be more useful making an analytical sale, meaning like the person, the buyer, and you see this a lot in technology, for example. Like if someone's looking at our company, they're looking at several companies that do similar things. They're looking at the pros and cons of each one. They're much more of like I think a lot of people that buy technology, it's much more like a spreadsheet buy. It's a professional buyer. They buy lots of technology, and um, we're just one of 100 vendors they're buying stuff from. So it's I think it's a relatively cerebral sale. Whereas other things, even technical things in other areas, might be much more personality based. I watched a friend of mine who's a doctor purchase a laser, and it's always interesting to me to kind of see the purchase from like the buyer's side, and I was asking them like how that experience went and how they made the decision, because we have a bunch of customers that are in this laser business, selling different types of lasers. There's lots of different things the doctors do with lasers these days, right? And uh and there are probably 4 or 5 lasers that she was evaluating in depth, and these are $200,000 pieces of equipment, right? And uh and and for her, like when you ask her how she made her decision, she didn't talk about like the speeds and feeds of the laser, or how you could tune them. Or it was like, well, hanging out with this rep, and we went here for lunch, and like it was the depth of the relationship that she had ultimately with the rep, I think, that really tipped her into just helped to determine which one of these lasers she was going to buy. And uh, and wh- which I've and I think it's important as a rep to be like, I'm the kind of person that builds those types of relationships. I need to be in selling a product that's important, versus a rep that's more like, well, I'm more this type of rep that would be great at explaining the depths of this piece of technology to this type of person who needs to understand how the servers work and what the speeds and feeds are, and they're going to make their decision more based on that. So get in where you fit in, I guess, is the
Yeah.
summary there.
Yeah, I love that, and that's why this field is wide open. So, like you say, let's say you're the relationship person. So my style is selling. I'm very conversational. That's why I started my own podcast as well. But
Hmm.
so I'm in medical sales, and so you're calling on top of the food chain clients, right? I mean, the doctors, surgeons, they've have 12 or 16 years of formal education. So it's a different dance we do, right? It's still the basics are there. Like you said, you're building a relationship. You have to understand the information, the technical information. You've got to move that prospect along, similar to B&B. Um, you are ultimately going to ask for the sale and try to deliver a product to meet their needs. And then to be successful, you're repeating that process. You're getting better at it. Your customers are happy, and your company is improving their products, and the cycle goes on. So, for the salesperson, because there's several steps along that path. What path do you want to be on? Do you want to be the face? So I'm the conversational guy. I like meeting new people. So I love knocking on doors. I mean, no one likes cold calling, but I mean, You can visualize, I like walking in and meeting somebody new and or going out to lunch or having a cup of coffee. I've got friends who are sales engineers and they just soon not do a lot of that. They would want to talk specs and how to get the reduce the tolerances and look at engineering blueprints. Um, and so the good news is in a sales cycle, there's all of that. There's the marketing piece where it starts. There's the salesperson who walks in the door. Then there's the technology part. Then it's delivering on the goods, right? Shipping the product out the door. And to be successful, you need all those parts. So what's great about this is kind of figure out as a salesperson where your strengths are. We all do the personal assessments. And my favorite is DISC. That's DISC for people. That's a real quick, personality assessment of your communication style. And so if you're more technical and quiet, you like to sit back in the room and listen and think through details. Just know that about yourself. Or that would be the C on the disc chart. I'm the I, which stands for influence. I love making that personal connection and trying to influence that person through conversation, energy, relationship, using selling verbiage. And, uh, and so whatever personality assessment you like, because a lot of these big companies will use those anyway to assess you coming in the door. So you might as well get a jump start on it and learn that about yourself. Then that helps you kind of see in that sales cycle where you feel like you can really contribute the most.
And what are some examples of small, short action items that salespeople can set based on their goals? What are some things people can do there?
Yeah, I think that the your goals have to be again part of this bigger picture where since we started off talking about career. So one thing about sales, it's it's different from the old generation in our economy where if you had a good job at a Fortune 500 company, your goal was to work there 25 or 30 years, get the golden watch, get the pension and leave and retire. That was the dream of people out of the post depression era, World War II era. Well, we know those days are gone. Those days are over. So we create value by really, this might be, people might disagree with this, but really by changing jobs as you advance, as you conquer one skill or one sales position, and you kind of climb up that, out of that hole and become good. Chances are you're going to make more money, have more opportunity when you jump ship. It's just kind of the nature of it. I mean, your employer is not most likely to come to you after 3 years of being successful and offer you more, but a competitor probably will. I say that to say, when you're setting your goals, realize it has to be kind of in your view of, okay, I'll probably be at this job. If I'm in sales, I don't want to really look more beyond really a year or two, 3 at the most. So my goals boil down to how do I be successful in that year? How do I do the things that I can focus on in that start of the year, that quarter, to reach the sales goals, the activity metrics that my boss will look at? And then, at the end of the year, can I win a sales contest? Can I be above plan? Can I win the golden crown? If I can work backwards in that year and focus on what I can control, those activity metrics, um, then really, if that's within a 2 or 3 year scope, that's all I really have to worry about because anything beyond that's pretty irrelevant. After 12, most of us, we've learned from the pandemic, even a year is plenty far enough in planning. But to focus on the metrics that you can control to, make your numbers.
Yeah, it's so interesting that you say that because I've actually given people that exact advice before, to switch companies frequently. Um, because I feel like you often get to jump a leg up on the ladder, by moving around. You're kind of reevaluated based on your existing skill set, and people will often give you a bump, even though your existing company you were actually more suited and better equipped to be bumped up a rung at your existing company because you've been there for a while. You know how things work. You know the people. You know the processes. So it's like I've noticed, especially at big companies, moving around and it certainly benefited me. I mean, moving switching jobs, I was I always didn't move laterally. I moved, actually one move was purely lateral, but almost same territory, same everything, but it was at a much better company. And so that still ended up, it's almost like an effective lift.
Yeah.
But at
And
the
I'm
same
not saying
time,
I think sorry to interrupt, but you and I would
mhm,
agree not necessarily our desired strategy to say, "Hey, I've got this wonderful job. I'm only going to be here 2 or 3 years," but it's more reality. It's more based on the economy. It's more based on you creating a career that you keep growing. Chances are, after 2 or 3 years, or whatever that number is, when you change companies, you'll get a new skill set. You'll have new customers. You'll have new tools, new competitors. But along with that, and when you're in sales, since you're being productive, that's a natural move up because you've been successful at company A, and it's just kind of the nature of sales. A recruiter calls, a competitor hires you away. It's just kind of the nature of it. So it's good for us going in knowing that. And if you like, now I've been in my company uh, uh, almost 20 years now, believe it or not. But I have changed jobs within that prior to that. So, but I got to a level where I really love, and they like me, I like them, and it's a real happy thing. So, I've been producing, I've been rewarded for it. So, when you find that sweet spot, yeah, ride that ship. But along the way, and I might have millennial kids, and they've all done the same thing, and I get that. That's in order really to keep growing when you're in your late 20s and 30s as a business professional and a salesperson. I think today, with just changing technology and the changing market, it's fine to see that I'm probably going to have 2 or 3 or 4, maybe even 5 jobs. Maybe not. There's no magic number, but I realize I'm about growth and performance, and I'll probably get more of that if I keep moving down that continuum. That's my thought. Would you sound like you agree as well, Steve?
well, yeah, like I have given that same advice. It's interesting running a company now. Like it's almost like I've taken that advice into my own way of behaving and turned it on its head, where I try to be the type of place, because I think that having people work for a company for the long term is way better for them and way better for the company if the company treats them fairly. If you give, like I try to promote from within rather than hire from the outside, and top people. I try to, pay people what they're worth on the open market. I refresh their stock options in a way that, we have stock options in the technology industry. It's not necessarily common at larger companies or in other industries, but like here we have stock options, and like I refresh their stock options every 4 years in a way that when they I give them the number of options that, like, if you're the VP of sales, I give you the number every 4 years. I give you the number of options that you would have gotten moving to another company, and those vest over 4 years.
Nice,
and
nice.
and I think it's really, so it depends on the company you're at, right? Like, because definitely there are a lot of companies where, and you can kind of tell by looking around, like, is this the like, are all the new managers being hired from the outside? If so, then I'm probably not going to move up through this company, right? The way to move up is to leave. um, but if they do a lot of promotion from within, and if people are making competitive amounts of money, meaning if they switch, they'd make the same amount of money, switch company to make some money, like the and not just money, but other benefits like options and everything else, then that's the kind of company you can stay at for the long haul and actually do better, because you create way more value being with one place for a long time, because you just know where all the bodies are buried, you know how everything works, you know the people that get things done, you know who's good and bad to work with, you just know, all the things, and you just become, you know, I think that you're kind of green in a company until you've been there for 3 years, right? Like once you're there for 3 years, you really know how things work, and you just can kind of hum along. Like someone working 20 hours can get as much, if they've been there for 3 years, can get as much done as someone working 40 hours who just started yesterday. I think.
Yes,
Um,
that's great. I just add that along with that, as a sales rep, you're saying, okay, am I hitting my goals? If so, like you're saying, I'm going to be rewarded for it. And hey, sky's blue. Let's keep cranking here. Let's keep going. Right now, if I'm not hitting my numbers, it's either me or the company or something's not right. So, can I fix that? Is there something I can focus on? Do I need to make more calls?
Hmm.
Do I need to get more coaching from my boss? I have the calls, but I'm not closing the deal, or the company's not following through on their end. They're not shipping the product, or they have problems with technology. You're a software company, so
Well,
your newest edit is not out yet, and my customers are waiting for that.
yeah.
I'm saying for the sales rep, you evaluate all that. The great news is because you're good in sales, you'll have lots of opportunities. You just have to evaluate. Is it worth sticking out another year here? Can I perform and get rewarded for it? If not, what's great about what we do, there's tons of opportunity out there. Not always better, to your point. Sometimes it's just better to humble out and get the help you need to be better at your current job. But the nice thing is, again, what we do is because we're in sales, there'll always be opportunity. But like all of us, it's kind of a business risk. To your point, it's a little safer to stay where you are. And I'm very loyal. Again, I love my company. I've been here a long time. So I see both sides of it. But for the millennial, the younger crowd, I think it's good, and not just to change jobs to change, but one thing I help people with now and helping them get hired in medical sales, the first thing we start with is your story. Like if you're going to go to an interview for a very high paying job, I want to help you to have a story. And develop your story. So if you've had these successful jobs that you and I are talking about, Steve, let's bring all that together in a really interesting, persuasive story. So when you're in that high stakes interview, you can share why you got hired by this company, why you left, what your accomplishments were. At the end of the day, that's what people really want to see, right? You're a CEO. It's about performance. And as long as we can address that and we have that personal element you talked about a minute ago about buying the laser. Why did she buy that? She bought from the person. At the end of the day, we buy from people, we hire people we like, and but as long as performance is addressed there, and so as salespeople, those are two big things we can control.
Yeah, and I think it's worth thinking about what are the questions that a person can ask themselves. Is this a company where as a salesperson I'm going to thrive, or would I do better somewhere else? Or conversely, I mean, I guess it's same question, same concept. I'm evaluating applying at these different companies. How do I know this is the company that I want to work for as opposed to that one? And maybe these are questions you could ask a hiring manager. Maybe this is research questions you can just ask the internet. Maybe these are questions for Glassdoor. Um, but like an example would be like if I'm at laser company A and I'm considering my career path, maybe I'm an expert in lasers. I like this industry. Should I think about moving to laser company B or C? What are the things that I should be evaluating as I kind of consider that move? What should I be?
Yeah.
What question should I be asking?
I love that question. And I'll tell you why. I worked with this young lady who was a critical care nurse, and she got her first medical sales offer this week. So she basically doubled her income. And she's working, has a flexible schedule now, got out of the critical care unit after COVID. So she's thrilled. And they're negotiating the final offer. We talked and she had questions for me. And I would, to try to evaluate how good is the offer. Like the money looks good. She was new to sales. So here are the things that you want to think about if you're a salesperson and maybe even as a manager to make sure that when you put an offer out there, people are on the same page. One, what is the exact territory? Sounds simple, but it can be confusing. Is it the state of Indiana? Is it, you know, customers, big customers down to mid-range customers? Do you guys share a geography? So as a salesperson, as a manager, have a clear territories that rep understands. That's one. Two, do you see yourself working for that manager? I mean, did you have a good connection with him through the interview process? Or maybe not. Maybe the regional guy came in and took interviews for him, or maybe he was away in a business trip, but you didn't really get to know the person you work for. That's a red flag. Secondly, or thirdly, do you understand the comp plan? Okay. Not so much that, we pay you 10% of gross sales, but do you as an individual understand the math on how that works? Now, some of them are very complicated. So you're not going to understand everything, but is it simple enough that you know if you sell X number of widgets, you're going to make X number of dollars? And then fourth, I'd say, do you understand the sales process? So is it a lot of Zoom today? Well, maybe I hate Zoom. A year ago it was all field sales. Well, today might be Zoom, email, some in-person sales, um, or maybe they don't know that because we have still come out of this pandemic. Well, before I take a job, as a rep, you can offer me a 75 or $100,000 package, but if I can't address some of those things, I really don't know if it's for me or not. Now, for example, if you say, "Well, Mike, we're about 75% Zoom right now because the customers aren't seeing us," I might hate Zoom. I might not be that good on Zoom. My skills might be the taking people out to lunch, or the opposite. I might be introverted and I love Zoom. But understand the sales cycle and what it takes for you to sell X number of widgets. Not so much that you just have to sell 100 widgets, but how do we do that? What is the sales process like, and how? And then last thing I would just say, finally, in this topic is training. A good company is going to invest a lot of money in you for training, and you'll know if it's a good opportunity and a good if they're setting you up for success is, ask yourself, how much are they really investing in me? Is it straight commission? Hey, great. Now, some people can do super well with that. Hey, here's the old yellow pages. I'm doing air quotes here. No one uses that anymore, but here's the customer list, right? Go get them. Well, for some people, that's awesome. For somebody else, that doesn't really set them up for success. They want some training. They really want a career that, as they work hard, they'll be supported by their company, and there'll be enough training to really help them when they get out there and they get out on a limb with a big customer and they're trying to put a deal together, or they need some technical help. The company is there to support them. So I think that if you evaluate all those, five things, it really helps you evaluate, is this a good opportunity for me? Uh, and or it might look good on paper, but I'm not really confident yet to make the move.
Yeah, I uh, I guess I think you're dead on, and I think these are really important questions to ask, whether it's your job or a new job you're considering. A couple other things that I'd add to that list are trying to figure out either through the and it's tough. This might be a tough question to figure out from a hiring manager, but maybe you could find out from a salesperson what percentage of the reps are making their number. Because I've seen some companies, where 75, 80% of reps are making their number. And I've seen other companies where it's, you know, 20% of reps make their number. So like no one's really like, this is a half comp, half base, half bonus plan. And basically nobody's making all their OTE because on target earning, because no one's because the plan is set in such a way that the numbers are really hard to hit or impossible to hit. And a small percentage of people are actually making it. I'd also look at the margins of the product if you're like looking across different industries or even competitors within an industry. Sometimes you're at a competitive advantage or disadvantage based on the cost of making the product, and so it's better to be with in general selling things with higher margin is always better because they're just willing to pay you more. And my lesson was learned on this the hard way. I was selling both hardware and software, and I kind of figured out, well, this is when I was at IBM early in my sales career, and I was like, "Well, wow, they sure do pay me a lot more to when I sell software than hardware. Why is that?" And it's because the spiffs were better, the payouts were better, and it's because if you sell on a server, there's a 5 to 10% margin, right? It's basically a commoditized product. Where if you sell a piece of software, it's a 70% margin, and so they're people are willing to pay their salespeople more for selling higher margin products. So if you can figure that out, sell the higher margin thing. I think another thing that's hard to tease out, but is really important, and often the salespeople in the industry, and it's great if you are already working in this industry because then you'll know this, the relative market share among competitors. So there's five laser companies. Which ones are growing their market share versus which ones are shrinking their market share? You often want to be at the ones that are growing their market share because they're just winning deals, and therefore, as a rep, you're likely to win more deals if one laser company has just a cooler patent that allows their stuff to do better stuff or whatever the advantage is. If you don't want to be with the you don't want to be at the shrinking company
Yeah.
or the company who's shrinking in market share. Even if the overall industry is growing, if one company is just doing better than another, you want to be at the winning company.
Yeah. And I think back to the idea of the career. So as a salesperson, if I understand a lot of those, so we go deep like you're doing now, you go a little deeper in the analysis. And I step back and look at because it comes down to selfishly what my opportunity is, right? Like
Sure.
the company's great, the market's cool and all this, but again, I have to get up and go to work every day. And can I do this job? In other words, do my skills fit this? And if I go out and work really hard, if I hustle and crank it up every day and get out there, which honestly, I mean, that's why we go into sales. It's competitive, it's exciting. We want to go make it happen. So I'm not talking about the folks who want to slack and the people who are just settling back and not wanting to work because eventually they will not be around much longer anyway. But for the people who want to perform and you sit back and do that analysis, then you get to decide, okay, is it does this fit my skill set to stay and can I be successful or can I go? Should I go? For example, in my role, even though we've had a little less access because of the COVID, something you said a minute ago, our product has the margin because it's patent protected. Obviously, right? We're medical. So to your point, how do you get that? One way to get a nice margin is to have a protected, patented technology. Um, and so along with that is the marketing plan that the marketing team is doing. And I realize my part to get that sale, I play one part of that. So if I keep doing my part, they're committed to doing their parts, and I'm going to be successful and make my number and get paid. At the end of the day, that's my selfish as a salesperson. That's selfishly what I'm looking at.
Absolutely. Well, I think that's a key thing to try to figure out as you evaluate a place. What's the marketing air cover? Is this a company that is going to be providing me with warm leads that are easy to close for some percentage of the sales I'm going to be making, or am I going to have to um, stir up every trail that I'm going to follow? Do I have to have found that trail myself as I stalk my prey? Um,
Exactly.
and not to mention, some places just have more to invest in things like marketing or sales, and some places are just more of a sales driven culture. And the you want to figure out, is this a sales driven culture place, meaning like what is this a place where upper management and leadership, and the culture of the organization values sales and wants to have a top notch sales team, meaning you're going to pay them like a top notch sales team, and treat them as such? Or is it a culture that kind of begrudges sales? Because some companies,
Yep.
and you see this a lot in technology, um, the company is founded by a technologist and they think sales is kind of this annoying, silly exercise that you have to go through, and they don't understand why the humans behave like this and why people can't just buy their product off their website. And that's not a great place. That's often not a great place to be a salesperson, because the culture kind of views sales as this like weird, annoying thing that you just have to do and it's silly. Whereas other places are like, oh no, sales is where the money comes from. This is really important, and we're going to treat it as such.
Yeah. And the things we've talked about already, like you say, action speaks louder than words. So if you see the comp plan and you can calculate it, like you said, you talk to the other reps and you find out how they doing. Are they hitting their number? Hey, if they're hitting their number, that sounds good. Like, if I can make 100,000 or 125, whatever your number is, right? And it's 80% salary and, 20% commission or whatever, 50-50, doesn't really matter. If I can hit that number and maybe that it's unlimited, hey, sign me up. But the opposite is true. If it doesn't, if I can't see that and it's not happening, then why do I'm not going to think I can change it, and there's probably better opportunity somewhere else. And it's so that's again, that's why you and I are talking, right? That this is a great profession because as you get better, you'll be more perceptive of the things we're talking about, and then your career should follow that same path.
Absolutely. Well, and how up to date, or how can salespeople stay up to date, on new sales trends and sales skills that they need to work on?
Well, I think the beautiful thing, I just love this, is just the technology age we're in, right? The information age. So most salespeople are in the car. So, invest in self-learning. It's just amazing. I absolutely love it. The podcast, right? Just podcaster awesome. You can hear from every kind of sales leader in every specialty, whether it's B2B, it's software, B2C, the consumer, medical, dental, vision, you name it. And within medical, you've got capital equipment, you've got surgical disposables, you've got medical products in the OR, knees and joints.
Mhm.
Um, and that's a wide open field. So let's say you want to learn about that, or uh, you know, so between podcast, audio, audio.com, books on, demand in the car. So I just think that self-learning, to answer your question, it has to be kind of self-driven. Courses you can take, training you can get, free courses, and then paid for courses. I paid so about 5 or 6 years ago, I was stuck in my career. I felt like I had a manager who was just not working with me very well. I felt very stagnant, and I was pretty far along in my career. But so I paid like 1,200 to 1,500, I forget what it was, to hire a career coach. Just did a couple of these assessments, really kind of evaluated where I was, and that was just very helpful. It invigorated me. So I went on in this disc, assessment I'm talking about. I went on then and became certified as a trainer myself, but that helped me so much in sales to get refreshed with my upper management and my sales, to have this, to be aware of these assessments and realize that some of these personality types are so, strong in one area, that it's not my fault or my problem that, I'm struggling here. It just, what we learn is that sometimes it just takes a lot more energy and a lot more work on our part as an employee with a tough manager or a tough customer. And so through that career growth, that $1,500 I spent was the best money ever, because I just invested in myself. So to answer your question, there's just so many tools out there, but I think being willing to invest and grow, and find whatever specific targeted area that motivates you or challenges you, and invest in it.
Yeah, and the disc model, in case people aren't familiar with it, it's kind of like another personality type survey, kind of like Myers-Briggs. But yeah, it's like the D is dominance, and so you're like a very direct results person. You're competitive. The I is influence. Which is what you were saying. You were It's more like enthusiasm, friendly, optimistic. I think a lot of people probably fall into there. Compliance is the third one, is the C, and that's like, you're cautious, you're contemplative, you're accurate. Probably a lot of lawyers in that group. And then steadiness is the S,
Yeah,
like a sincerity, patient, modest. Probably a lot of like teachers in that group.
yeah.
Um, but
Perfect. You
yeah,
did a great job. That was, I'm high-fiving you. That was, you did it. You spelled it
thanks.
out. 'Cause I
Well,
gotta laugh because 'cause I'm the I, the influence, and my wife is a school teacher, so she's more steady.
yeah,
So I come in all excited, "We're gonna do this, we're gonna do that." She kinda looks at me like, "Okay, what's the cost gonna be, and
yeah, yeah.
what do we do next?" I'm like, "Who cares?" She said, "Well, when do we start packing the car?" I'm like, "Who cares? We're going to the beach, let's go." She's like, "Wait a minute, do we have an oil change in the car?" I'm like, "Okay, she's probably right." So it makes for a better partnership, just
Yeah.
understand.
Yeah, she's the S&C. Yeah, I think, yeah, it's a cool model for people to check out. A lot of these frameworks, they're useful ways to think about the world, I
Right.
think.
Yeah, there's no right or wrong silver bullet, but they're useful, like you said.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, what tips do you have for field salespeople who are looking to network with other people and build out a group of more influential connections to grow their career? What would you recommend there?
Well, there's obviously the real obvious elephant in the room, right? You want to live on LinkedIn, basically, right? LinkedIn, and through not so much the old days is, "Hey, Steve, I'm trying to get into, software sales. Can you help me?" Well, you're a busy guy. That's not real motivating. But maybe it's, I see you on LinkedIn. I see. "Hey, Steve, I've had several friends use Badger Maps. It's helped their productivity. How'd you start the business? And I'm trying to get into sales. Do you have any advice?" Well, now that probably stops you in the middle of your day. You're like, "Wait a minute, the guy's flattering me. He understands what I do, and he wants my help." As a human being, you're more likely, just because you're human, to respond to that and wanna help the guy. So the 2 steps I encourage people on LinkedIn, yeah, because again, it's all about LinkedIn, but the key is it's the networking, to meet other people and, compliment them and ask for their advice as an initial connection on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And then from there, nurture that relationship and find out what they like, a follow-up DM, maybe a phone call. If they're in your community, meet for coffee, um, and a phone call, and be curious, like, be curious about them. Let Share about your background, and as you nurture that relationship, it's just, you know, I don't think anybody probably realizes, every day there's some new, eye-opening thing about LinkedIn. When we start, again, listen to podcasts or wherever you get your information. And I think the successful people are in the way to grow in our career, that the tips are it's through those people you meet, um, whether that leads to a job or a marketing insight or maybe just a peer that you kind of buddy up with in your sales journey. I can't tell you the number of jobs I've gotten and the opportunities I've gotten, and you can probably relate, just through people we met that you meet. And now LinkedIn allows us to do that in just a click of our, little iPhone on sitting in a waiting room with somebody else, and we never know where that connection could lead.
Absolutely. And I feel like these connections and networking can be so important, um, to the development of someone's career. Uh, How what do you think about the role mentorship can play in a salesperson's career? Why is this so important?
Well, I think whether it's the formal paid role as the sales manager or regional manager, district manager, whoever you're going to report to, and then the other peers you seek out. I think it's to answer your question. So you have those formal ones I just described. Your goal, though, is to get better, right? To learn. And so if you do it through the direct report you have in management, or you seek out a peer that you uh, whatever, submit yourself to them or humble yourself to them, or just ask questions like, "Hey, how'd you get there?" Or, "How do you feel about this sales strategy?" I think the more you can initiate that is really how you win. Because today, again, with LinkedIn, what's changed everything? In the old days, it was way more formal. But like now, you and I are doing this podcast. It's the second time you and I have spoken. We're building a friendship. Our audience is getting to know both of us, and that wasn't even possible several years ago. And the more we can have those connections, it's just amazing. Where they can lead. I mean, it's just and that's really where sales and growth will come from.
And tell me about how someone can stand out. How can a field salesperson show that they're the best person to pick for a given promotion, amongst their competitors? In this case, their teammates. What are some of the best ways to do that? Other than obviously like sell more and do more big deals, like what are other some more nuanced things they can do?
Well, I'm going to answer this by kind of going back, 'cause I felt like I wanted to share a story and I didn't really get it out in time. But, let's just combine both of these. That, one way to stand out is through who you know and the networking. So when I landed the job I have now, I had tried to get in with my company on 2 other occasions, and they had a recruiter called on both occasions. And one, they flew me to downtown Philadelphia for a big hiring event, and another time, I think it was Cleveland, and I live in Indiana. So on 2 different occasions, I was recruited and then, flown out for these interview sessions and in both times I didn't get the job, and I really wanted to work for the company I'm with. And so I was kinda like, "All right, that was a lot of work." I spent a lot of money on my brag book to to tune up my sales pitch about myself and all my accomplishments. And I think I spent like 250 bucks at, getting a professionally bound brag book was, what we always recommend in medical or pharmaceutical sales to have, a brag book and to be able to implement that in the interview process. And I didn't get those. I was pretty devastated. But then about whatever, a couple months later, I met a fella in a parking lot in a medical building. We were both making sales calls. Bottom line, he yelled out, "Hey, what's going on?" And we started connecting, bonding, and really through that friendship, then he worked for the same company that I had been trying to interview with and got rejected. And he's like, "Hey, I'm getting promoted. We have an opening. You should talk to my boss." And one thing led to another. I get hired. Now I've been here, 20 years. So, how did all that happen? Well, I had that connection with him. He was super well respected. Then he introduces me to his manager. And then, so now we've cut through all that, mystery of who we are. We're trying to get noticed because of the people we meet, right? And that I met him. And then me using my sales skills to understand what they're looking for and, apply, be myself, right? At this point, I think that answer your question, those are the two things, just the people we know and just get better, be comfortable being you, right? If you're a we have a certain path, a certain background, all of us do. Don't apologize for that. Don't minimize that. But back to that disc or whatever assessment you like. If I'm an enthusiastic sales guy and I like conversation, man, play that card, right? You're a CEO of a software company. Obviously, you're a really smart guy, right? You know technology. Your past different than mine. In a CEO party, you're going to be the big hit. In a party where somebody wants someone to talk to, they might like me better. Uh, and let's learn that about ourselves and get really deep, get really good at it. So I started studying, like, what does it mean to be an eye in the disc thing? And how can I spot the other personality type? So when you go deeper in those assessments, you shift from learning about yourself to be able to read other people. Now that comes in really handy in sales. So I'm kind of giving you the long answer that, the people you meet and then learning about what you're good at and investing in that and getting really good at that. Don't like we say, don't really focus on getting better at your weaknesses. Oh, it's yeah, you want to be on, you want to address them, but really put your energy into your strengths and really excel at those. And I think that will lead to your point. That will lead to getting noticed and getting promoted and having more sales.
And yeah, and I couldn't agree more. I mean, it's all about the you stand out through relationships, you stand out through leveraging, what you know, what they're really looking for in this new job, in this new opportunity, uncover that, and then show how you fit that, and frankly, just stand out through your past performance, right? I mean, which is the kind of the obvious one, I guess. Um, how would you say salespeople should assess whether or not it's time to look for a new sales job opportunity at a new company? Especially where there's a tough economy right now, a lot of companies are on shaky ground. How should a salesperson look to the future and say, is this the best place for me, or should I consider something new?
Yeah. Well, again, I think it's back to that individual. Like in your situation, life, are you young and single and are you super competitive? Did you play sports in college or high school and you love the grind? You love being on the edge. Well, you might like a little more, commission oriented approach and really want to, knock on doors. But if you're maybe a different place in life and after the COVID, you're like, wow, it's hard to see people. Maybe I've got a mortgage now and some kids and hey, a base salary sounds pretty good. Maybe I'm looking at the healthcare industry, realizing, as I always say, as the baby boomers get older, you're always going to need medication, and you always get people always going to want to feel better and look better, and so you've got the government that's you know is a kind of underpinning of the medical industry, right? There you got insurance companies paying the bills, so you're always going to need good reps there. But I think look around those industries and say, where do I want to be in 5 years? Is it financial? Is it technology like you with software? I mean, there's probably two or three industries that are always going to keep growing. Those are definitely three of them. And so if I crank it out in company A, and I'm hitting the activity metrics that I can control, Am I getting rewarded? Am I making progress? In will if not, will this company bounce back? Yeah, if not, then it's time to move on. I'll give you a story for me. I was in industrial sales for 6 years out of college. I loved it. It was a good old boy network. It was like the steel mill, but it was brass and copper, so non-ferrous alloys. I loved it. It was going into little small plants where you might have a guy with a few machines in his pole barn, pumping out, parts in there. Or I was calling at one point on the VP of General Motors, and their production line shut down, and they had to talk to me immediately because, all everything was gonna, fall apart. And I loved it. It was talking to that one guy in overalls, bending over a oily machine all day. The next call, I was talking to some guy in a three-piece suit, and he's got 3 factories and he wants to use my company. I loved it, but unfortunately, the profit margins continue to shrink. So I decided there's no long term in it the way I saw it. Between the unions and the overhead, there was just no profit margin. I'd sell a big order and the boss would say, "Congratulations, but we're losing money on your order." So,
Yeah.
to your point, you do the analysis and you say, "Okay, if I bust it for another 3 years, 5 years, am I really gonna I might be at the top of the ladder, but is that ladder leaning against the right wall?"
Yeah, well, I think that it's that I've advised a lot of people who have career challenges to switch to industries like software, pharmaceutical, med device, because there's a lot of stuff you'll find yourself selling just it's not growing that fast, or the margins are compressing, or the industry is shifting. Maybe this is something that actually can just be sold over the internet because certain things can be, other things can't be. Whatever it
Exactly.
is, you whatever the reasons, it's definitely worth. Those there's a reason those handful of industries are so good because they just have those characteristics that make them good to be in. But there's lots of them, right?
Yeah.
That there's people making a killing in a whole bunch of industries, but also there's a lot of things that are being squeezed in new ways.
I'll give you another example. Like I worked for let's call it a distributor. It's probably the best. Maybe the B&B folks can relate to that. Working for a distributor versus for the OEM, right? The original equipment
Hmm.
manufacturer. And yeah, the distributor might have more lines, more products, more to offer as far as quick turnaround and more service to offer the customer. But at the end of the day, when the customer, has to cut back vendors, do they want to deal with distributor or do they want to deal with the original manufacturer? And I found at one point in my career, I was having fun selling. I was doing great, but the distributor was really kind of disjointed. Like he was strong in my local market, but then regionally he was weak. And so my business began to unravel and fall apart because, there was no continuity in the business nationwide. So I went back to the original, equipment manufacturer, or in my case, pharmaceutical industry, because there was that uniform business approach across the country. And I just thought, as I'm going to build my career, I'm going to hitch my wagon to that. The distributor was a little more sexy, a little more fun. I had more freedom. We're going to make all this money. But over time, their business model was so diluted because they had so many products and things going on that it wasn't sustainable.
Yeah, and I think that's an area of field sales jobs that at times is at risk. And you have to figure out if yours is one of the ones that is at risk or isn't. Is that distribution model? A lot of times we see this in the dental industry, for example. Like the people there's a lot of distributors to dentists, right? And it's not the maker of a med device, for example, that the dentists are buying. The maker of the med device doesn't get squeezed by the world shifting towards internet. It's the distributor. So
Exactly.
the maker of the med device used to go direct to dentists through these big distribution companies, but maybe now, um, they also are going to market through Amazon. Therefore, the distribution companies are competing with Amazon, who's also kind of a middleman in a similar way. Uh, so the field sales job could be at risk, and you have to figure out where your industry is, and how if you have a new major competitor like that, or maybe it doesn't affect you at all, just because this is really industry by industry and situation by situation. Maybe the guy that sells gloves to dentists, that was all going through distributors, and that part of the distribution network is now being fulfilled by Amazon, but the med device or the laser is still either going direct or going through through a distribution company, and people aren't going to buy a $40,000 laser over Amazon, right? So it just really depends on the market and the item.
Yeah, and so you and I talked about this earlier, but, be confident in your story and in your brand. So to your point, maybe you're with a distributor and you're selling all these gloves. Well, as soon as we come out of COVID, maybe the gloves and masks aren't gonna be such a big deal. So you got to work on your story and say, okay, how can I parlay that into the next step? Because, what we're talking about for the rep, we want you to have a successful career, have a great lifestyle, and make lots of money. And then at some point, look back and be able to, be satisfied that you had a productive career, made lots of money, and have more opportunities. And that really comes down to each of us kind of owning our story. And I say that, Steve, to share one other one, for example, where I got fired one time. I was with a, so to speak, a distributor, and they had a promise that if we got picked up this certain type of customer, they would have this free technology they were going to give them. Um, and, so we're all pumped up. We're out making sales. And I had this big presentation. I picked up this multi-state client, and the hook was they would get this free technology if they switched, and signed up with my company. And the owner of that clinic looked at me and said, "Are you sure?" Like, she's like, "That sounds good," but she wanted my personal guarantee as a salesperson. And honestly, because at the end of the day, that's all we have, right? As salespeople, I mean, it's really our word, our integrity, and our motivation that gets us out there every day. So basically, I delivered the goods, and then the company changed their mind, and they wouldn't give the promised technology away that they said they were.
Oh, I hate it.
So I honestly, I called them out on it, and they didn't like it, so they fired me. And I didn't handle it the best. I mean, I left a voicemail for my boss's boss, or boss. So that was not smart. I learned, right?
They're like, and you're fired.
Yeah.
Thanks for
So
your feedback. We know we're
yes.
jerks.
So
we knew that was going to piss people off. We didn't care.
yeah, I was
Well,
young. I was young. I was foolish. I just went on so I get fired, but the moral of the story was I was devastated, but then within a couple months, a company called, I got hired, and I won their top sales award the next year.
mhm. Well, and honestly, we talk about red flags on a company. I think that is something to look at is how what are the customers saying about that company? That's a key one to look at because you do something like that and your customers will never forget what kind of company you are, right?
Exactly. But and then in my own brand, though I share that story in that, okay, I had to that was not the way to handle it. I was young, I was fired up, but I made a mistake. I got fired. It was humbling, but then I landed on my feet, got a better job, won the sales award for this new company the following year. I think that was a trip to Hawaii with my wife, all expenses paid for a week. So, you know, the point is, we as salespeople, we're going to go through those ups and downs. Ride that roller coaster, embrace your brand. It's sales, right? You're gonna irritate some people. You're gonna burn some bridges. We can't be nice to everybody. I'm not saying, be politically incorrect or do anything stupid, but sales is the kind of thing where you're always pushing that line if you're doing your job just enough to not go over the line. And we're gonna make mistakes. And but point is, back to your point, you can do all your analysis you want on a company, but as a salesperson, it's kind of your personal brand, your story. But the good news is, with that, you're gonna stub your toe, but you're gonna keep as long as you keep going forward, there's gonna be more opportunity. That's the exciting thing about why we're in sales, right? And why you're making software for salespeople, that you're gonna need salespeople. You're always gonna want good salespeople, and they're all different. So find your brand, find your strength, and do more of it.
Mhm. Well, next section is sales in 60 seconds. Quick questions, quick answers.
Sure.
Um, what is one thing that a lot of salespeople don't do enough of or neglect, but if they were to focus on it, they would be more successful?
Yeah, I think that again, we're trying to mimic a stereotype, like this number one salesman. So let's all be like, Steve. He sold, he was at 150% to plan. Let's see his sales presentation. Let's imitate his sales presentation. That's all great. I love it's definitely a great way to learn, like we talked earlier. But I got to find how to do it in my style, and I've got to find my manager that supports me or my coworker that supports me and get good at that. Maybe I'm not good on Zoom. Maybe I hate email. Maybe I'm really good at technical presentations. So, I've got to learn what I'm good at, how to get better at it, and not trying to copy and imitate what's working for everybody else until I, can discover my own success.
Absolutely. And what would you say if you had one, if you had to name one critical skill or trait that salespeople need to be successful, what would it be and why?
Might not be a trait, but I would say enjoy the process. The successful people realize you only learn by doing things and making mistakes. Unfortunately, the school system and what we're mostly taught is we're in trouble if we make a mistake. Well, I'll give you an example. Like I bought some real estate and lost lots of money on it. But I had a business degree in college and I took finance classes, but none of it stuck, in my brain. But when I was writing those checks and understanding the tough management, real estate management company I was dealing with, and the difference between asset and a liability, and what a balance sheet looked like, and what you know debt is not personal wealth. If you want personal wealth, don't make a lot of dumb mistakes with your money. But you know what I learned? I read, I got on the, like I talked about earlier, I got on podcasts, books, read tons of stuff. And now, I'm way further ahead. All that paid off. I turned all that around to success. And then, of course, the career example I shared with you. Yeah, I stuck my foot in my mouth. I got fired, but I learned from it. And now I don't see things are going maybe, in my opinion, how they should be run. Hey, I've grown up. I don't just go call somebody up and give them a piece of my mind. There's other ways to do that. So I think enjoy the process, especially if you're a millennial. The only way to get the more successful people are going to throw themselves into it and grow and learn rather than feel like they're in trouble for making mistakes and trying to do everything perfectly.
And what are your favorite sales tools?
Yeah, that's interesting. So in our business, they provide tons of resources, and it's like Salesforce is the big one we live on. Um, and we're pretty limited. They provide them for us. There's no flexibility on, me going out and creating my own stuff. Um, And so I know it sounds boring, but Salesforce, honestly, today, email and Zoom, getting more. Again, nothing real fancy there, but I think just there are amazing sales tools, and just learn for the customer how I can use those to fit my day and for the customer. Because what we've learned is just everyone's different, right? Somebody likes a personal meeting, a handshake. Somebody wants an email. Somebody is fine with Zoom, and somebody else a phone call. Hey, give me the bottom line and hang up. What I've learned is you can get sales through all those, even though I might enjoy hanging out and having lunch. You're a busy guy. Give me the bottom line, get the order in, and go on with your day, and don't waste my time having lunch. If I can still sell 100 widgets that month and I didn't have 5 busy lunches with you, you still bought the product. I have to learn that the business world is continually evolving, and what worked before doesn't necessarily work now. More importantly, as long as I'm effective, that's all that matters.
And what would you say the greatest sales lesson is that you've learned over the years?
Persistence, persistence. I remember one in industrial sales. I was calling on this fella, a big company, and I mean, for years he told me no, no thanks. He was using my competitor, and then one day in the back of my mind, I think I heard that there might be a strike with that competitor. So when I went in that guy's office one more time before he threw me out, I just said, "Hey, if there was ever a strike, wouldn't it hurt to get us qualified on the product, just in case you ever had a supply issue?" Well, we sell tonnage, so one the next A couple days later, the phone call rang. They called my district office and placed an order for $40,000 worth of product just to get us qualified. But hey, we were having a sales contest, and that $40,000 order was nice to feather in my cap.
Absolutely. Well, that's persistent and
I
creative,
love
I
Can I
would
tell you
say.
another one? So, I was calling on a busy, cataract surgeon, and these folks are extremely high paid, obviously extremely, they're surgeons, right? Dealing with people's eyes. And the competitor had them all locked up, so in a post-operative care, you would sell a antibiotic and a steroid, right? I think and we would give them and the goal was to try to get one of those scripts, uh, for every cataract surgery that they do. And he reassured me that he's fine. He's with the competitor. In fact, they're in a big surgery center, and they didn't need our product. Our product was a little bit different. But at lunch, I mentioned to him, now our product has an analgesic benefit. He's like, that came back later. So you mean like when the little old lady gets a little scratch from her suture on Saturday morning, she might not call me back and wanna have questions to my nurses? So all of a sudden the gears were turning just because I dropped in that little tiny, nuance, but it was a huge benefit to him. But on the surface, if I would have taken no for an answer, I would have never had the lunch. And if I didn't try to understand what his needs were, and I didn't present a solution, and I didn't even know that was exactly a big deal to him. But for his busy world, a very successful, high volume person to not get phone calls on a Saturday or Sunday morning after a surgery is done meant the world to him. So I got the business. He switched to our product.
Yeah, and just so people know who aren't in the medical field, analgesic means pain relieving. Um, and and I guess what is the lesson there? It's like be I guess that's seeking to communicate your unique value.
Yeah. I like that.
Um,
And you asked me about perseverance, or you asked me what the most important thing was. I think, perseverance, but do it in an intelligent way. You don't want to just pester people. That I mean, again, salespeople, we're going to hear it. It's our job, man. I mean, my first boss said, "Hey, if you don't get thrown out of a few offices, you're not doing your job."
yeah.
Now we don't want to take it to that extreme today because the world's changed. But point is we have to push. Now, if we do it with good persistence and perseverance, we're getting better and smarter. And then, like to your point, what was that? Well, by the time I got there, I had looked at all my notes, that on those previous calls, maybe where I was thrown out or told no, thank you. Well, those calls weren't wasted. I didn't just drive around like a maniac and pound my. No, I would take mental notes or written notes, and that's where again Salesforce would come in, and I would say, Steve says, this. Steve said that. He said no because of this, and that moment, through all that perseverance, got me to that stage where now I had my moment, whether it was that hook with that industrial sales guy to say, "Hey, what would it hurt to qualify us just in case your supplier of all these years had an issue?" Well, that stuck in
Hmm.
his mind. Or the surgeon, when I just threw out the analgesic benefit, he's like, "Oh, you mean that would relieve these dumb phone calls I get?" I shouldn't say dumb, but interruptions to my Saturday morning when I'm out on the golf course. I don't have so but that came through perseverance and working smart and working hard and listening to the customer.
Well, and data is so important here too. The information you're gathering about your customers. You mentioned we sell these two drugs together, and our goal was to get at least one in. But sometimes you can run a play, right? If you have information on, okay, who are all the people that are just using this product of ours, but not that product, even though they kind of work together. Well, okay, now I just figured out this great play to run where these guys, anyone who's already using this, we really have an advantage to get them to add on this additional thing and displace the competitor that we know they're using because of this way they work together. So show me, and obviously I'm biased here because of people use badges do this all the time. Show me on the map where who in my entire territory is doing that, doing this but not doing that. I want to go see all of them with this sales pitch specifically. But like running, I mean, you don't need us obviously to do that, but like figuring out how to run those plays can be so important.
Yeah. And then where your product comes in, Badger mapping, I mean, obviously, the old saying, right? We all know time is money. So a number one goal for the salesperson is know where the adage 80% of your business comes from 20% of your customers. So all the things that Steve and I are talking about, we're not going to get there overnight, but the goal is through that persistence that I talked about in those examples. In time, I'm spending my time where the opportunity is. I've got a little plaque on my desk here. It says, uh, it don't come easy. You got to dig for it. You got to dig where the gold is. And where your product comes in is, I want to spend my time where the payoff's going to be the greatest. So I don't want to run around and spend a lot of time just calling on everybody. I've got to have a really important business strategy and a focus. And use that time and energy so that when I do hit a home run, when I do get some business, it's at the right place, right? There's a lot of opportunity once I break in that it's worth it. And that really just comes from time management, which your service offers, Steve. And that's probably the most important thing for sales, for salespeople and anybody who's looking at moving into sales or moving into medical sales. We call that, your routing, your calendar, your schedule. You'll get always get better and better and better at that because ultimately that's what helps us to be successful.
Absolutely. That's what we're trying to do around here, right?
Yeah.
As an actual takeaway, what would you say the field salespeople who are listening today should do as a first step towards better managing their career path?
Well, I think that looking at their personal values and goals. So, when you're young, your sales is this whole thing is just kind of a little starry-eyed. It's exciting. I remember for myself, but as the years go by, hopefully you're positioning yourself, as we've been talking about today, with the best company, where the best opportunity for you is, where you're hitting on your strengths, but ultimately, you want to build some personal wealth. Let's just be honest. I mean, why are we doing this, right? What are you going to have to show for it? So you have to balance out a job satisfaction and being excited about going to work, but hopefully your net worth is growing at the same pace. And you're looking back saying, I'm hitting my sales numbers, I'm being rewarded for it, whether that's, merchandise, trips, award bonuses, points, in your case, stock options, a lot of things. But if I look back after a couple of years, let's say 5 or 10, let's say I'm in my late 20s, say middle 30s, I have to have a pretty good, age wise right here, a pretty good map on is it leading to success? And that success is different for all of us. But you got to figure out what's important to you and is that job getting there? I look back at one point and I had overdone the real estate. As I mentioned earlier in our talk, I got crazy like a lot of people and you can't go wrong in real estate. So I made some bad investments. I had kids in college, was trying to save for a mortgage. I realized one day, because again, we've talked about sales, you really don't want to look at your career more than a year or two out because the economy and the market's changing so much. So do am I winning enough? Like, am I building my own personal wealth enough that if this story ends, if this company quits, if we have another pandemic, right? Whoever knew we'd have a pandemic, but if they say, "Hey, your service is no longer needed," and that's gonna happen in sales. That's the risk reward of sales. It can happen. Am I being successful in what it means for me to be successful? And it's all different for all of us.
Absolutely. Well, tell me, where can our listeners read more about your work? You're doing so many cool things to help people with their careers. Where can they reach out to you? What's the best way to communicate more with you?
Yeah, thanks. So probably LinkedIn, just Michael Hayes in LinkedIn. You can see me. I'm the career coach there for pharmaceutical and medical sales. Or you can go to my website, gethiredinmedicalsales.com. And of course, listen to my podcast, Get Hired in Medical Sales. And Steve, I just say the reason I kind of ended with that last part about our personal goals and say personal wealth from all this is because that's what I love about medical sales and pharmaceutical sales. If you Google the best $100,000 sales jobs, the top 10, two of those, one will be medical and one will be pharmaceutical sales. And the reason I say that is because w- when we're looking at all these career options, you want to put yourself in a market where you're going to be rewarded for it. You're going to get the training you need to develop, and you're going to have future opportunities after you are successful. I mean, that's what it's all about. And if you look around and folks are listening and saying, "Hey, I feel stagnant in my job," or "Things have changed. I don't feel like I'm reaching my sales numbers," or "Frankly, I think I'm worth more in a different area," consider medical and pharmaceutical sales because everything Steve and I have talked about today. That's why I love medical and pharmaceutical sales. And it's not for everybody. At the same time, when it says 2 or 3 years sales experience, what I can show you is how to develop your story and how to find your transferable skills, maybe from your current job situation, your current sales background, or your even non-sales role, and how that can be applied to a medical or pharmaceutical job, and where it says 3 to 4 years sales on the ads. Listen to my podcast; you'll hear people all the time getting hired who had no sales background. So, just for more information, check out again my podcast, "Get Hired in Medical Sales," and then of course reach out to me on LinkedIn.
Fantastic. Well, this has been a great episode of the outside sales talk here. If anyone works in field sales, you'll love Badger Maps, the number one route planner. Helps you sell 20% more and drive 20% less. You can get a free trial at badgermapping.com today. If anyone can think of any sales reps that would benefit from learning about the career coaching and what, how to think about your career that Mike has taught us about today, share the love and forward this on to them. Mike, thanks so much for sharing your wisdom with us and take care until next time, everybody.